Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's focus session on Google Vacation Rentals. My name is Adrielle. I'm with the onboarding team here at OwnerRez. I also have Adria joining me today from our help desk team. She is kind of our resident Google Vacation Rentals expert, so she will be helping out if we have any questions at the end. If you do have questions, please feel free to put them in the question and answer section or in the chat. I'll be checking both places for questions at the end. Speaking of the chat, if you could let me know if you can see and hear the presentation, that would be great. And then we'll go ahead and get officially started. And I'll wait to hear from just one or two people. Okay, awesome. Thanks, Jay and Paul. Let's go ahead and dive on in. So today is going to be an overview of Google Vacation Rentals. We're going to talk about how to configure your surcharges, how to configure your discounts, how to set up the connection, how to find your listing, and what the booking from the guest side of things. So from within your OwnerRez account, you'll want to start by going into settings. And it's important to be aware that Google Vacation Rentals has some different requirements for surcharges and discounts than some of the other channels that you might be connected to. So we'll start by looking at surcharges. And right off the bat, you need to know that Google Vacation Rentals only recognizes a limited number of different types of surcharges. So your basic ones like your cleaning fees and your additional guest fees, those are going to be fine. Pet fees, Google Vacation Rentals is not going to take those into account when guests are searching on Google Vacation Rentals for a property. However, the guest can add pets later on in the process, and then they will have that charge added to their booking. So just be aware of that. If you're searching for your listing on Google Vacation Rentals, pet fees aren't going to be added, but later on in the process, that will happen. For additional guest fees, if you have an additional guest fee configured where it is, let's say, instead of per night per guest, you have it set to per stay, Google Vacation Rentals will not accept that surcharge. Google Vacation Rentals requires that your additional guest fee is per guest per night. And so you could either change your regular additional guest fee to match what GVR will accept. And just for reference, if I say GVR, that means Google Vacation Rentals. So you could either change it to per night, and maybe instead of $100, you would set it to $50 or $25, something like that. Or you can keep it the way it is for all your existing channels by adding a condition and choosing criteria of listing site, and then you would do anything but Vacation Rentals, and then click Save on that. And then you would go in and create a second surcharge, and this one is only going to apply to Google Vacation Rentals, and we'll set it up in the way that GVR will accept. So again, it would be a fixed amount, and let's say $25 per night, and it's for every one guest, let's just say above 6 up to the property max. And then we need to remember to add our condition. It'll be listing site. And in this case, we're just going to do Google Vacation Rentals and then click Save on that. So now we have 2 additional guest fees. One is the incremental per night per guest fee that Google Vacation Rentals will accept, and that's applied only to Google Vacation Rentals. And then we have just this flat amount that's per stay that will apply to bookings through any listing sites other than Google Vacation Rentals. Another thing to note on these surcharges is that you cannot have a surcharge that's based on the arrival or departure date. So for instance, in these conditions, Google Vacation Rentals will not accept any surcharges that are based on arrival days or departure days. So make sure that your conditions don't include any of those. And then another thing to note is that Google Vacation Rentals does not recognize positions in surcharges or discounts. So if you have positions here, just be aware that that won't apply to your Google Vacation Rentals listings. All right, moving on to the discounts. You can access those here on the left by clicking on discounts. And the main thing to know with your discounts is that they cannot be subtotal discounts. So for instance, if you have a weekly discount and it is set to % of subtotal, Google Vacation Rentals will not accept that. It either has to be a fixed amount or percent of rent. So if you have percent of total discounts right now, you can simply change them to percent of rent, and that will work for all your channels. Or similarly to what we did with the surcharges, you can add a condition here to exclude Google Vacation Rentals from this discount, and then you can recreate it in a way where Google Vacation Rentals will accept it by doing the percent of rent. So you'd save this one, and then you would create a second discount with all of the same settings, except that it'd be percent of rent instead of percent of subtotal. And then you would end up with two of these discounts here, one that's anything but Google Vacation Rentals and one that's only Google Vacation Rentals. As I mentioned with the surcharges, Google Vacation Rentals does not recognize positions with discounts either, so keep that in mind as well. And then the other thing to know about discounts is that they have to be marked as taxable if they apply to taxable items. So in the case of Google Vacation Rentals, we know it's going to apply to rent. Your rent is most likely a taxable item, so this needs to be marked as yes. It is pretty unusual to have discounts that aren't taxable, so your discounts should already probably be taxable, but there may be certain situations where it's not. So just be aware of that and how that's going to work with your Google Vacation Rentals listing. Taxable discount, just so everyone understands, means that the tax is calculated off of the discounted amount for the guest and not off of the pre-discounted amount. So let's say that you have rent of $100 and you have this 10% discount. Instead of being taxed on the $100 amount, because the discount is taxable, the guest will pay tax on the $90, which is the post-discounted amount. If you set this to no, then the guest is paying tax on the $100 and not the $90 that they're actually paying. So just keep that in mind too on these taxability settings. Okay, once you have all your surcharges and your discounts configured correctly for Google Vacation Rentals, the next thing you want to do before you proceed with listing on GVR is you want to run our Listing Quality Analyzer tool. And you can access that by clicking on the wrench in the upper right corner of your account and scroll down and click on Listing Quality Analyzer. And you can choose just the channel that you're focused on and then just the property that you need to look at. And click Analyze Listings. And then it's going to give you all of this information about your listing. So any errors need to be addressed, and then any warnings need to be reviewed and potentially addressed. So you'll want to look at all of this information carefully, make sure that all your errors are cleared. If you have an error on photos, that is the one error that you can ignore as long as that photo looks good on a computer screen. Make sure that you're looking at it on either a laptop or a desktop to make sure that the resolution is clear. If it's phone, then you won't be able to tell the quality of that photo. But if the photo looks good on a computer screen, then you can typically ignore the error on the photos. All the other errors and the warnings, like I said, they should be reviewed and addressed. Warnings might not necessarily get cleared out, but you just want to be aware of what it is. And if it's something that you do want to address, you can address it. Once you've done that, you can go into Settings and click on Channel Integrations. And then you'll click on Connect a Channel and scroll down and click Connect Google Vacation Rentals. Once you click on that, you'll be brought to your Google Vacation Rentals settings page. And that page looks like this. The first thing you need to do is decide whether you want to use the OwnerRez global landing page or a hosted website. If you don't have a hosted website, your only option is to use the OwnerRez global landing page. The reason for that is Google Vacation Rentals has really strict pricing accuracy requirements. And when we were developing all of this, we realized that if it went to a non-hosted website, then the pricing accuracy would fail frequently. And if that happens, it can affect all of the other OwnerRez users that have a Google Vacation Rentals connection. So we had to create this global landing page, and so you can use that or you can use a hosted website. I'll show you what that looks like from the guest side in just a few minutes. The next thing you'll want to do is choose your mode for Google Vacation Rentals bookings. You can either be on Instant Book, where the payments will be charged automatically, or you can be on request to book. And if you are on request to book, this will follow whatever settings you have on the property rules page for pending bookings. It puts it into a pending status. I'm just going to keep this set to instant book for this example. The next section is your booking window and duration. Most hosts will just keep this set to whatever is configured on the property level. But if you want to do something different specifically for GVR, you have that option here to do that. And then the last thing you need to do is choose your cancellation policy. So GVR gives you 4 different options, and you can choose the one that makes the most sense for your business. And then click Save on that. Once you have saved your Google Vacation Rental settings, you'll be brought to this instructions page. Essentially, all you need to do is click on the Properties tab right here, click on Change Property Mappings, and then you'll be brought to a list of all the properties that are in your OwnerRez account. If the properties are eligible to be listed on GVR, you'll have a checkbox over here in the included column, and you can check that box to include that property and then click Save. Once you've done that, all of your included properties will appear in a list right here. They won't be live on GVR yet. GVR actually takes several weeks to go live because it's a manual process on their side. It takes quite a bit of time for them to bring the listings into their environment. But you will see your properties listed here, and you can check back after 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It can take 3 weeks or so for it to be live. So if after 2 weeks you still don't see that green active link, don't worry, just give it a little bit more time. I would say if it's been more than 3 weeks, then you may want to reach out to our help desk just to see if there's anything else going on with it. And also make sure that you have run that listing quality analyzer and that there are no errors, because that will cause GVR to just ignore your listing altogether and not bring it in. But after a few weeks, you should see a green listing link here. And when you click on that, you'll be brought to this page for your listing. This is what it will look like. This is not exactly what the guest sees when they find your listing, but it's pretty similar. From here, you can find how the guest would find your listing by clicking on the city. In this case, it's Page, Arizona. So you click on the city for your listing. And then you're going to be brought to the hotels. So you want to make sure you switch over to vacation rentals. From here, depending on how many listings are in your area, you probably want to zoom in on the map part to try and find your property. So zoom in quite as far as you can where your property is located. And then you can click on Update List. Clicking on Update List will update the properties that appear over here on the left. And then you can scroll down and try and find your property in this list. Let's see here. All right, which one? Okay, I think it's this one that I'm looking for. I'm going to open that in a new tab. And yes, this is the global landing page here. This property uses the OwnerRez global landing page. If the guest clicks on this website, it'll just take them to your website. If they click down here in this dates area and the number of guests, and then click visit site, it will take them to the global landing page. And it remembers the details of what they searched for. So it'll remember the dates of their stay and the number of guests. And they can make any changes here if they need to change dates or add pets or add children. It gives them the summary over here on the right of their booking and the total. And then they can fill in contact information and click Book Now. Once they've done that, it behaves very similarly to a direct booking. They're going to go through that process of signing your renter agreement, so on and so forth. Now, if you have a property that uses a hosted website, I have an example here for what that will look like. Again, if they click on website, it'll take them to your website. If they click on visit site in this area, it's going to take them to the exact property page for the property they were looking at on GVR. And again, it's also going to remember the details of the dates they were searching for and the number of guests. Here they can make changes, and then they can fill in their information and either book now or send an inquiry depending on how you have your booking widget set up on your website. Again, once they do this, it's going to follow that same booking process as all of your other direct bookings. It'll behave very similarly to that. All right, so one more thing that I want to note before we wrap up is that when you are on Google Vacation Rentals, if you ever need to delist your property for some reason from Google Vacation Rentals, we recommend that instead of delisting, you do a channel blackout. The reason for that is if you delist, your property is completely removed from Google Vacation Rentals. It's not like Airbnb or Vrbo where you're simply kind of pausing the listing. And so if you ever decide to relist with GVR, you're going to have to start over from scratch and go through that whole 2+ weeks waiting period again. So in order to do a channel blackout, you can click on Channel Integrations in the settings area of your account. Click on the Blackouts tab, click on Create Channel Blackout, and then you can put in your start date for when you want that property to be unavailable and an end date. In this case, I'm just going to block it out for 2 years. Then you can choose a specific property or properties that you want removed and the channel. So in this case, we would just do Google Vacation Rentals and then click Save. And now the property that you selected will be unavailable on Google Vacation Rentals for this time period. And if at some point you are ready to go ahead and start accepting bookings again, you can either edit the end date or you can simply delete the blackout. And then your listings will be available again without having to wait that 2 to 3 weeks that you would have to wait if you fully removed them from Google Vacation Rentals. All right, so that brings us to the end of today's presentation. We talked about how to configure surcharges and discounts for GVR, how to set up the connection, how to find your listing on GVR, and what that booking process looks like from the guest side of things. And now we will go into some questions and answers. Let's see if anyone has added anything into either the chat or the Q&A area. All right, so it looks like, I think, Sherry, we answered your first 2 questions during the presentation. Let us know if you need any more clarification on any of that. We have another question from Sherry. The surcharges and discount Google perimeters you discussed are for the charges marked as automatically. Yes. Is there a way for guests to add the optional surcharges, such as pool heat or early check-in? Adria?
And so the guest on Google is just being directed right to your website. So if you set up your website to have add-on charges, then you're going to be able to have the guests select those at checkout. And we do have an article. Let me drop it in the chat here. I'll put this in the chat for you. It tells you how to set those up. So if you, I don't know if you do or don't have add-on services already set up, but you can set them up so that it's kind of part of the checkout process. And Google is really just steering people to your direct website. So if you've got it set up there, you are good.
Okay, awesome. And let's look at the next question. On my OR channel integration area on the selection for instant book or manual booking, mine has both crossed out. Okay, so that sounds to me like you don't have a payment processor. Adria, would you agree with that?
That could very much be a possibility. I'm trying to go to her account, but right now I'm not getting there. The computer's slow. Okay. If you wanted to write a ticket to help desk to check into that, we could take a look at that. Just include a screenshot or a link to the page where you're seeing that, so we go right to what you're looking at.
Yes, and that email is help@ownerrez.com. All right, let me switch over to the chat. Okay, awesome. So Sherry, if you have Stripe already connected, it's possible that you don't have any properties assigned to your Stripe account. That's a common thing that I come across. So that might be the issue. If that is, the way to fix that is to just go into your settings and scroll down to the financial section, click on payment methods, and then click on your payment processor. I only have manual ones set up here, but you would click on Stripe. And then down at the very bottom, you can select the properties to use your Stripe account with. Make sure that those are selected. And that's what it sounds like to me is going on. But if that doesn't fix it, then please do write into our help desk, help@ownerrez.com. Speaking of the help desk, We have a lot of resources here at OwnerRez available to support you. Our help desk, of course, which I already mentioned, and then we have lots of support documents and videos that you can find in our support library, ownerrez.com/support. We also have our forums where you can post questions or ideas and get feedback from other users as well as from our team, ownerrez.com/forums. We have our blog where you can stay up to date on all of the latest industry news as well as updates made to OwnerRez. We just published our article on the updates that were made in April, so be sure to check that out, ownerrez.com/blog. And then we have our webinars page where you can register for future webinars, but also see all of our past focus sessions and other webinars we've done with our industry partners, ownerrez.com/webinars. Be sure to check out all of those resources, and I hope you will join us on our next focus session. Thanks so much for being here. Bye-bye.